Welcome to the channel. One of the nice things about getting into this handheld gaming hobby later rather than sooner is that these days there's a lot of choice in the market. And some stuff that you can pick up relatively cheaply is actually pretty good. So here is a new suspicious package from China, although less suspicious than some of the ones I've gotten, that has a handheld I picked up over Black Friday for the Black Friday deals. And you can probably still pick this particular one up fairly cheaply these days. I have not opened the box other than to make sure what was in it, because I figured that a video of opening, say, cat food probably is not going to be very interesting on this channel. So, this is not the new portal or anything. This is the original Odin 1 that we have here. The Black Friday deal shipped with a case, although I'm not sure why you would want microSD cards for an Odin. Came with a little, assuming this is a screen protector. Yeah, a little screen protector in there. Branded even. And let me put some of this stuff aside. Some room on the desk. And here we go with the original packaging here. Somewhat of a fancy box. This is the Pro model here, 8 gigabytes. I figured I didn't want to get a handheld that had not enough RAM to do a bunch of stuff, so went with the 8 gigabyte model here. And we'll see if we can get into the package. So as I try to get this wrapping off here, here's the specifications of this device from their own website. See, this is a Snapdragon, but it's an 845, so it's an older one. This is not going to be as good as what you would find in something like a Retroid Mini or a Retroid Pocket 5. But we'll see how it does, assuming we can get everything to start up here. I've got the 8 gigabyte version here, 128 gigs. There is a basically a 6-inch 1080p screen. We'll see how well that is. And other than that, the battery here, not nearly as big as the Odin 2's. Comes with Android 10, which is these days a little outdated, but given what you typically do with these devices, I'm not sure it matters that much. But here we go, and let me get rid of the little overlay. Let's open the box and see what we got. I'll try to open the box. So a little user's manual here. Oh, the specs are here. That might be easier to read. We'll see if the device has any charge. I don't know if I'm going to charge it for 30 minutes, but see if I can get it out of the box. The first challenge with the device is actually getting it out of the box. So we have a charger cord here. Here's the system itself. So I got the transparent black version. So far so good. Not much to the sticks so far. These are it's like little switch sticks. So comparing this to some other devices, you can see it's a bit bigger than a PlayStation Vita. compared to the Odin 2, which came afterwards. See that they're actually fairly similar in size. The Odin 2 is a little bigger. The big difference here, I think, is not so much the footprint, which is pretty similar between the two devices. The difference here is that the Odin 2 is significantly thicker in both the body and the little ergo bumps here than the original Odin was. But other than that, they have fairly similar footprints, I believe. Comparing to the Odin 2 Mini, the original Odin, of course, is a bit bigger, although, again, in terms of thickness, they're pretty comparable. The Mini's body, of course, is a bit bulkier, and the Mini's actually pretty heavy. I think the Mini may actually be just as heavy as the Odin 1 is. One more quick comparison among sort of similar devices. Here's the Anbernic RG556, which is, again, pretty similar in size. All these have similar screens. The Anbernic's probably a little larger because of the ergodynamic features. But other than that, it's pretty similar. The Odin 2 is the Odin 1 is a bit thinner. In terms of what's on the device here, got our buttons. Of course, the buttons and the sticks here are not offset in any way. We've got what looks like to be analog triggers. And I guess under here would be SD card slot and HDMI out, which is actually under the cover this time as opposed to just being open like on the Odin 2. We have headphone jack, USB-C. Don't know actually if that's only for charging or whether it's for the video out. I know on the Odin 2 you can do video out, but I don't know about this one. But we have a HDMI out in any case. We've got some macro buttons on the back here. Looks like a vent. And speakers here maybe are backwards firing. Looks like it. So I'll be curious to see how the sound quality is. And looks like a home button up here. So that is just a quick tour around the device. Let's actually see if this thing has any power. So I've got a battery here. Got my own USB. Let's see what it does when we plug it into a little bit of power. See if it's completely dead. We just need to wait and charge it for a while. Or whether we have enough juice to make stuff happen. If I'm reading that right, it seems to think it's fully charged. It's only pulling 4 watts out of the charger right now. So it probably has enough juice. So if we want to get going here, I do have a SanDisk Ultra microSD here with some games on it and some emulators. Just kind of to get started here. Not going to try installing a front end here on a first impressions video, but let's just open this case here and see if we can get the microSD in there. So which way? Must not be that way. Okay, so it goes in label side down. I think I got it there. I'll close this back up and see if we can power this thing on. So far, so good. Okay, I can tap the screen or I can hit R1. Controls work so far. Good news. So let's pause for a second while I get this information entered here. Okay, so we've got the Wi-Fi set up. It does support the 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi, so not that surprising, but worth mentioning at least. Okay, so we got Eastern time here. Yeah, I think I'm just going to do, I guess AOSP is just Android. We'll go to gesture navigation for now. And here we go. So far, so good. Screen looks fairly nice for a non-OLED screen here. So put the brightness up to reasonably bright here for the camera. So what can we have for fan? Okay, we got smart fan. Guessing this is performance. Yeah. Performance modes. LED. I guess there are some LEDs on this thing. Well, on mine, they don't seem to be doing anything. So I do not see any LEDs at all. Maybe a configuration thing. At this point, we're back with the original Odin Pro after installing some software. Didn't actually take that long to install the software, but since I did the unboxing and I actually hooked it up to the network, it decided it wanted to do a system update, and the system updates for the Odins are never quick things. Usually takes a little while. So came back a little later, but I've got a couple of Android games installed. I have some emulators installed. We're going to check those out, and a few other things that I usually install on my handouts just for the heck of it. But what I think we're going to do now is we're going to play a few games and take a look at how the game performance is with a little bit of PlayStation 2, a little bit of PlayStation 1, and a little bit of Android gaming.
don't really want to mess with us, do you?
I can take him on myself. Spear of ice! Moron, know your enemy before you strike the first blow.
You don't really want to mess with us, do you?
Your way of life. Chill out, okay?
That hurts!
Spear of might! Spear of might!
That was easy.
Haven't you had enough, Mr. Calderasha, sir? I'm sorry, but I've got a business to run. This, hap...
What? My fortune-telling? Haphazard? Are you a Let me tell you something for free. All fortune-telling is haphazard. What do you expect? Anyway, so what if I saw it? So what if it would only have led to another?
I'm sorry, Mr. Calderasha, sir. If you're saying you knew about the fire...
Yes, poor rivals.
Current war status suggests that consolidation of League activity within Gallinair is now vital. League Command insists that the Gallinair battle platform must be seized from Imperial control to prevent further costly Navy incursions. Intercepted Navy data transmissions indicate imminent transfer of troops and hardware to Galanire. League Command plan to transmit false data from platform in order to prevent this. For this to be achieved, it is imperative that this mission is carried out within a strict time buffer. Ensure that battle platform is disabled within the time allocated. Platform shields and sensors must be lowered. Platform must remain undamaged to enable subsequent League assault landing.
Attention. Enemy fighters detected. Remaining time until capture force frigate reaches target, 5 minutes.
Let's get rid of these fighters first, then disable this monster.
This is Command. Battle platform disabled. Well done.
Commencing jump sequence.
Have a cup of coffee to jumpstart your day. You know, coffee is not a must, but a calm and relaxed mindset should. Say no more. Awaiting order.
Enemy backup has arrived.
Understood. Quickly. Time to hunt.
Out of the way! 踊れ踊れ。さて、どこから潰したもの。目を背かないで。そういいでしょう。私の足元で許しを乞いなさい。落ちよ、ロードレスキャメロット。ゆっ応援いいお酒。覚悟
行きましょう。
適当にやっとくわ。
夏が来たりてかぎろい揺れて、雨が来たりて命が変わる。息吹の御霊、八脈怒涛。
もう参ります。提案粛清。
よく言いましょう。
そして英語、星の灯火が消え、諸人は運命を裁かれる。マハープラーよ、帰るときましょう。帰る。
ああ、遊んだ遊んだ。
ここで何を。被弾覚悟。お前のの。まだだ。何。外れ。
So, after seeing the games, what can we say about performance? The PlayStation 2 games were done native resolution, not too many tweaks other than setting the hardware download mode to readbacks disabled, which is a pretty common tweak for a lot of devices, not just the Odin. But other than that, didn't really do any tweaks. But as you can see, you'll be able to play most of the less demanding PlayStation 2 games with little difficulty on this system, provided you don't want to do too much upscaling. Again, all these were native resolution and they ran okay. They'd be a little bit of slowdowns, but I do see a fair amount of slowdown in Star Ocean on the weaker systems, and of course, running around the town there in Dragon Quest, particularly on weaker systems, shows a lot of slowdown, and we didn't really get any of that in this little gameplay snippet. The Android games, well, we picked a top-tier Android game to test out this system. We did Zenless Zone 0. I did set it to, the only really thing I did here was I set it to pretty much the lowest graphics settings, and I also made it set to 30 frames per second because there ain't no way this is doing 60. So you can see it's playable. There was a little bit of lag here and there for Zenless Zone 0, but as long as you have the original Odin Pro, which has 8 gigabytes of RAM, then if you want to play Zenless Zone 0 here, you can. But if you're getting the original Odin base with 4 gigabytes of RAM, I suspect the game wouldn't even start on that. So if you're looking to play Android games, I'd recommend, even if it's cheaper, steering away from the original Odin base just because of the RAM issue. A lot of these new games, they want 8 gigs. And Zenless Zone 0 definitely is not really playable with 4. I think you need a minimum of 6 to have it even start. And of course, I threw a PlayStation 1 game in there just because, and as you can see, at 1080p upscaling, of course, this system has no problem, even being a little older, handling upscaling PlayStation games and stuff like that. I didn't do any PSP games in the video because it's getting long enough already, but I don't think you'll have any trouble with PSP here either. I played 1 or 2 games offline, didn't really see any issues. So PS2 is probably where this tops off, and you're not going to be playing Champions of Norath on this. You're not going to be playing games like the more difficult to run of the Jack series on here. But you can probably tweak a lot of these games more than I've done. I generally don't like to do the underclocking tweaks because it messes with the timing in these games. So none of the gameplay footage had any underclocking. And, if you need to eke out a little bit more speed, that's also an option. And I also did use NTSC games for this. Since I'm American, that is most of my collection is NTSC games. So, 60 frames per second and 30 were the targets here. And, this is obviously not as good of a PlayStation 2 emulation platform as some of the newer handhelds. But, again, you got to consider the price. Being an older device, you might be able to pick this up for $100. And in that case, I think you get pretty good bang for your buck here. So, in my so far 2 days with this handheld, what have I learned? So, what was good about this device? So, for 2024, the Black Friday special on the AYN website, and of course you can pick these things up, these original Odins used, for fairly cheaply these days. So, if you're looking at price, this is going to be well under $200. So, in terms of competing with price, you're talking, if you can get like an Ambernic RG Cube on sale, it'll be about what this thing probably costs. But, so that's going to be the price that you're going to see here. So it's fairly inexpensive for what it is. For an LCD screen, the actual display here is pretty nice. I don't really have any, I didn't see any glaring problems with the display. It doesn't seem any worse than the Odin 2's display, at least not on the model I have. So it's a fairly high-end screen for what it is. Not OLED, but a decent 1080p 6-inch LCD screen. Also, you've got video options here. So you've got, this thing can output by USB-C video. You can also use the HDMI port up here, which is micro HDMI, so you might need an adapter. But it's fairly easy to get video output out of this, with one caveat, which I'll mention in a minute. And one other thing I noticed about this, particularly compared to the Odin 2 that I have, the Odin 2 is quite a fingerprint magnet. This plastic is kind of textured and a little grippy, and so far, I don't really notice fingerprint oil going onto here. So, it can maintain kind of looking good here. It also has a nice kind of feel to it. It's not quite as thick as the Odin 2, but, it has a decent heft to it. So build quality seems to be pretty good here. Now, some things that weren't quite so good. Of course, by 2024 and soon to be 2025 standards, this handheld is underpowered. It's only got a Snapdragon 845, which is kind of close to or slightly weaker than, Ambernic's mid-range handhelds with their T820s, and of course the things like the Odin 2, obviously, and the new Retroid handhelds, the Pocket Mini and the Pocket 5, of course, certainly outclass this in terms of processor. But then again, the Retroid Mini is about $200 now, and the Retroid Pocket 5 is more than that. So we're talking a pretty good, pretty big difference in cost. But still, if PlayStation 2 is going to be your primary loadout, unless you're on a real budget, you probably want to spend a little bit more and get something other than this. But if you're like, okay, well, I want some PS2 games, but I like most of the older systems than that, then a device like this is going to be great. There is some software jank. I half the time I end up calling this Ambernick jank, but this isn't an Ambernick handheld. But the original Odin has some of that same stuff. I did try out VIII emulation on here. I did VIII 3K, and I ran into this odd problem where if I ran VIII 3K, the up arrow would stop working. So up on the D-pad would stop working, and the only way to get it back was to reboot the system. So there's some kind of software jank going on here. Running VIII 3K disables me being able to push up, and that's true whether or not the emulator is actually running. You just run it, and up is going. So I also noticed that if you go into settings here, and you look at USB-C video output, you have to switch back and forth in the interface to between 1080p over HDMI, which is what I recorded the gameplay footage with, or there's USB-C output, but it seems to be locked to 4K 60 frames per second, which is a bit of a problem because my capture card doesn't do that. So there was no way for me to actually capture video out of here, and I tried hooking it up by USB-C to my older 1080p plasma TV, and it just would not output a picture. But the HDMI worked fine, so there's going to be some probably quirkiness using the USB-C port. So again, kind of some software jank here, and there's other minor things I won't necessarily fault it for. But I did find out that the reason that the ambient light option that was in the menu in the unboxing, the reason it didn't work is that the transparent models of the Odin 1 don't have any ambient lighting. So it's like, oh, why doesn't the light work? Well, there aren't any lights. But the software option is still there. So I consider that a bit janky. You think, okay, well, on the ones that don't have lighting, just don't have that stuff. But at any rate, at least I found out that my unit wasn't broken. It's just it never had lights in the first place. So there's a little bit of software jank going on here. The newer Odins are probably a little bit better than this. You know, they've stepped up their game with the Odin 2 and the Odin 2 Mini in terms of the software working without weird issues. But there are a few here. Nothing really game-breaking except for if you wanted to play VIII for some reason. The system actually would run the VIII games. It's just you couldn't use the D-pad up for some reason. Didn't run them very well. I think you're better off using a different handheld for VIII emulation. But I didn't play around with the drivers too much because of the whole thing with the controller. Could probably run better. I only tried one or two turnip drivers and the defaults. But the whole can't move up thing was kind of the deal breaker for me running VIII 3K. And another thing I should mention here is the controls. The controls here, you know, it's a very small, switch stick. Doesn't have the cardinal snapping problems that you see on some Ambernicks, but honestly, it's not really that much better. I mean, if you compared this to the recent Ambernicks like the RG556 and the RG Cubed, then you won't really find these sticks a whole lot better. And I think that was pretty common back a couple of years ago. It's like, yeah, the analog sticks just aren't that great. They'll get the job done, but you will have a lot better experience playing analog heavy games on the Odin 2 or the new Retroids or even the new Ambernick RG406 series. Those have nicer sticks than this. So the controls, in particular just the sticks mainly, and the triggers, even after calibration, the triggers aren't nearly as nice as what you get on the new Odins. So controls aren't quite as good. Again, nothing that's probably deal-breaking level. I didn't do a whole lot with the D-pad. I tend to play more analog stick games. D-pad seems to be slightly awkward here, unless you want to hold the handheld like this. But, in terms of the weird, except for the weird thing with up when running VIII 3K, I didn't have too much difficulty using the D-pad for what I needed to use it for. But the controls here, they have definitely upped their game when they moved to the Odin 2. But, so, okay, yeah, controls from a couple of years ago. But then again, this is a 2022 device. So, can't fault it too much for that. And it is cheaper now. So, overall, how is the original Odin Pro after a couple of days? Well, I mean, for the price, I had some complaints in the video, but for the price, I have I'm telling you what I think the bad points are. But for the price, I think it's pretty good. If you get this for, closer to $100 than $200, I think you're doing pretty well. And I think this device, despite being limited by, being an older Android device running Android 10, I think you can still do a lot with this. So if you're on a real tight budget and you still want something that's kind of premium feeling, then the original Odin here might be something you'd be interested in. On the other hand, if you really need that high performance, then spend a little bit more, get a lot more performance. So that's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, remember to leave me a like. And if you want to see more gaming related content, of course, subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching, and